Actually, Margie Clary is the reason I became a storyteller. We met, as she said, many years ago, and I was a children's librarian on James Island at the time, and she happened to catch me when I did, I hope that's going to stay, when I was doing some preschool story time, and she came over and she said, you know, why don't you try storytelling? And I thought, I can't do that. She said, oh yeah, I bet you can. I said, nah, I can't even remember where I parked my car. How am I going to remember those stories? And she just sort of kept at me and kept at me, and I gave it a shot, and lo and behold, here I am, 21 years later, and loving it. We're going to wait until whatever that is moves over. A lot of things I can compete with. I've had to compete with belly dancers, and cloggers, and trains, and gospel singers. But whatever that is, I can't compete with that. I'm just going to give it a moment. About anywhere between 40 to 80% of the people who were brought over from the west coast of Africa and put in indentured servitude, or I should say involuntary servitude, came through the port of Charleston. As they traveled across the Atlantic Ocean to the plantations, North America, South America, the Caribbean, the ones who came to America came in, as I said, through the port of Charleston, and they were actually placed on a little island just to the east of Charleston we call Sullivan's Island. And there they were put in what they call pest houses, P-E-S-T houses. And there they remained until the people who captured them were reasonably sure that they were free of communicable diseases, and reasonably sure that they weren't going to rise up and rebel against them, and reasonably sure that they weren't going to run away. And once these things were determined, then the people were taken out of the pest houses, put on smaller ships, brought to downtown Charleston, and there they were sold at auction. What I'd like to do is a simulated auction. It's not original. It was composed by a wonderful storyteller, musician, actor, director, producer from Chicago, Oscar Brown Jr. And it's simply called Bitter Men. Bitter men, get 'em in. That sun is hot and plenty bright. Let's get down to business and get home tonight. Bitter men. Auctioning slaves is a real high art. Bring that young gal Roy, she's good for a start. Bitter men. Hey now, she's a real good bio, about 15. Her great-grandmammy was a Dahomey queen. Just look at her face, she sure ain't homely. Like she been the Bible, she's black but comely. Bitter men. Now, who started the bid? Can I hear three? Step up, just take a good look, see, cause I know you want you see her. She's young and right, make a darn good breeder. Bitter men. She's good and feel she can sew and cook. Strip down, Roy, let the gentleman look. She's full up front and ample behind. Examine the teeth if you got a mind. Bitter men. Now, three's a bid for a man who's 50. 325, can I hear 350? Your money ain't earning you much in the banks. Turn around, Roy, let them look at her flanks. Bitter men. 350's bid, can I hear for it? $400, she's bargain short. 4 is a bid for 55. $500, now look alive. Bitter men. Don't mind them tears, that's one of her tricks. 550's a bid, can I hear 6? She's healthy and strong and well equipped. Make a fine lady's maid when she's properly whipped. Bitter men. 650's bid, now don't be slow. At $700, gonna let her go. At 7, she's gone. Pull down, Roy, bring the next one on. Bitter men, get 'em in. Bitter men. They say the people could fly. They say a long time ago, when some of us lived in Africa, we actually had wings and we could fly. We'd step out on the air just like you're stepping on the gate. And we spread those wings out and we fly over hills and mountains and rivers, over everything, looking like beautiful, beautiful black birds against the blue of the sky. And then, one dark day, some of the people were stolen from Mother Africa. They were put in chains and placed on great big ships, and those ships crossed the Atlantic Ocean during what we call the Middle Passage. Now, many of the people did not survive the Middle Passage. They either died of disease or starvation. Some of them simply willed themselves to die. Some of them jumped overboard, where they were consumed by the ocean or the sharks. It's been said that if we could somehow magically drain all of the water from the Atlantic Ocean, the floor of the ocean would be virtually covered with the bones of the people who did not survive the Middle Passage. Now, the people who could fly had to take their wings off before they left Africa. You see, it was too crowded on the slave ships. But although they left their wings behind, they never, ever, ever lost the power to fly. They simply forgot that they had it. And one such person who could fly was an old man named Toby. Now, Toby was loved and respected by everybody on the plantation. And another such person who could fly was a young girl named Sarah. Now, Sarah was 15 years old, and she just had a baby. But it didn't matter. She had to get out and work in the cotton fields like everybody else. And since there wasn't anybody to take care of that baby for her, she strapped the baby to her back, and that baby went out with her day after day after day as she worked in the cotton fields. And one day it was particularly hot in the fields, and the baby started to cry. And Sarah knew that she couldn't stop long enough to tend to the baby, to feed the baby, to take care of it in any way, because then the overseer would come over and whip her for not working. So she kept right on working, and the baby kept right on crying, until the cries got so loud they got the attention of the overseer, and he got up on his big fine horse and he rode over to where Sarah was, and he said, "Shut that thing up, Sarah. Shut it up, you hear me? I'll come down there and whoop you both." Well, now, I don't know about you, but I've never known a baby to stop crying if you tell it to shut up. It doesn't work that way usually, and it certainly didn't work that way with Sarah's baby. The baby just kept on crying louder, and the louder it got, the more irritated the overseer got, till finally he couldn't stand it any longer, and he took his whip and he started whipping Sarah and the baby back and forth across their backs until they fainted and they fell to the ground. And then, satisfied that the noise had ended, he got back on his horse and he rode over to where he'd been. And after the overseer left, Toby, who'd been working nearby, he'd seen the whole thing, and he went over to where Sarah was, and he bent his old tired back, and he stretched out his arm to her, and he helped her up on bleeding, painful, injured feet. And it was at that moment, that very moment, that Toby remembered that he could fly. And he remembered those magic words, long ago forgotten, suddenly remembered, all the way from Africa. Dubala, dubala, bela, dubala, dubala, bela. And when Sarah heard those magic words, she remembered that she could fly. And she started moving her feet like this, almost like she was about to do a ring dance. And she started flapping her arms up the way she used to flap her wings up in Africa. And before you know it, her feet were no longer touching the ground. Sarah flew with that baby strapped to her back all the way back to sweet Mother Africa. Well, now the next day it was even hotter than it was that day before. In fact, it was so hot that the people working in the cotton fields were just fainting from heat and from exhaustion, from dehydration. And every time one of the flying Africans fainted, Toby went over to that person and bent over and whispered those magic words. and they remembered that they could fly. Until finally there were 12 of those flying Africans standing around a circle, and Toby standing right there in the middle. And then they started moving their feet just as Sarah had done the day before. Well, now you know all this commotion got the attention of the overseer, and he wondered, what in the world is going on with these people? So he jumped up on his horse and he rode over to where they were, and he started yelling at them. What y'all doing standing around here, huh? What you doing, you hear me? Get on back to work. But they just ignored him. They kept on moving their feet and they started flapping their arms up. Well, he'd never seen this kind of defiance before. He said, y'all better get on back to work. I'll whoop you. You know, master paid good money for you. You better get on back to work. But they kept on ignoring him. And then after a while, their feet were no longer touching the ground, and they flew up higher, 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 way over the heads of the people working in the cotton fields. Well, that old overseer got so frustrated, he recently got his whip and he started whipping at them, but you see, he'd waited too long. And the people were so high up in the air, there's no way that the whip could touch them. And then he went back to his horse and he got his pistol and he started shooting at them. But you see, again, he'd waited too long. By that time, they were so high up in the air that even the bullets could not reach them. And just before they flew off, Toby looked down at the people left behind, and they seemed to talk to him with their eyes. Of course, they were afraid to say anything with the overseer right there, and they seemed to say with their eyes, "Wait, come back, we want to go too." Toby yelled down, I can't come back for you. I ain't got time to teach you how to fly. I ain't even got time to teach you the magic words, but you know, you can get away from this plantation. Run away to freedom, wherever you can find it. And with that, Toby with those 12 flying Africans flew all the way back to sweet Mother Africa. And after they left, that overseer, just as mad as he could be, he started talking to the people left. He said, "You better not say nothing about this, you hear me? You better not talk about this. I'll see that you're sold down the river first thing in the morning. You ain't never gonna see your family no more." Well, the people took the warning seriously and they didn't talk about it. They were scared. But then time passed. And people started to whisper about it, and word spread from plantation to plantation to plantation. People started running away all over the place. A lot of them took the Underground Railroad. They went to places like Pennsylvania, New York, Michigan, Ohio. Some of them went south to Florida. The King of Spain said that anybody who made their way down to Florida and helped them fight the British would be a free person. Some ran away to Mexico. Some ran away to Cuba. Some ran away to Haiti. One woman ran all the way to California. And when she got there, she staked herself a piece of land. And she worked that land and she worked it and she got more and more land. And before she died, she sold part of that land. And the part of the land that she sold is probably the richest real estate in America. Beverly Hills, California. True story. The woman's name was Bridget Biddy Mason. One man wanted his freedom so badly, he left his plantation near Richmond, Virginia. And he had some friends help him. They put him in a box and they bore holes in the box. And they put him in and they bound him up so that it would be hard for anybody to get in and impossible for him to get out. And they took him to the railroad station in Richmond, Virginia. And placed him on a train. And there he rode in that little teeny tiny box, just all scrunched up, with nothing to keep himself alive, but some water and some cold biscuits. And he rode like that for a day and a half until that train got to Philadelphia. And there he had people, friends, to help him get out of the box and to help him make a new life for himself. That's a true story. The man's name was Henry Brown. And after that escape, everybody called him Henry Box Brown. And then finally there was a married couple who lived on a plantation near Macon, Georgia. William and Ellen Craft. Now, Ellen Craft was very fair. She looked more like a white person than she did a black person. And they devised this plan. They dressed her up. They put her in men's clothing. They put a bandana here, the bottom part of her face, so that people would not see that she did not have facial hair. They put her right arm in a sling, put glasses on her, and she pretended to be a frail, young, white gentleman, and her husband pretended to be her manservant, her slave. And they took a train out of Macon, Georgia, and that train took them through Savannah, brought them through Charleston, North Carolina, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts. They went all the way to Canada, and then eventually they went to England. And somewhere between the American North, Canada, and England, they became educated people. And then, years later, when the slavery time was over, William and Ellen Craft came back to America, and they came back to the South. And they devoted the rest of their lives to teaching the ex-slaves. Ellen Craft is buried in Savannah, Georgia. William Craft is buried here in Charleston. And their descendants, the Herbert A. DaCosta family, remain here in Charleston to this day. You see, people did whatever they had to do to be free. And when the slavery time was over, the people who could not fly told the story of the people who could fly to their children. And the children passed the story on to their children passed the story on to their children, just as I've passed the story on to you today. For you see, surely the people could fly.